An extra.
Good evening, I'm Saul Saenz, and this is ABC 7 Extra Sunday Edition. Tonight we want to talk to you about a mosquito in our backyards. The reason? West Nile virus. This week, health officials reported the 4th case of West Nile virus. It's a virus transmitted by mosquitoes, you know, those blood-sucking insects. And the main way mosquitoes breed is in standing water, usually left behind after rainfall. What makes this virus so dangerous is there is no known cure. According to the health department, the city says a female in her 60s contracted the virus and has developed the neuroinvasive disease. She is currently undergoing treatment. Here's the conundrum. The Borderland is facing an almost 4-inch rain deficit, which means mosquitoes have limited breeding grounds. And an even bigger mystery is Vector Mosquito Control has mosquito traps in the county and has found no signs of mosquitoes that carry West Nile virus. Any tests conducted on mosquitoes trapped and sent to labs have come up negative for that virus. Joining us to talk about mosquito control population is Jason Zarate, who is the Vector Control Operations Manager, and Ginny Castaneda, Code Operations Supervisor for Vector Control. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Zarate. Vector Sector has mosquito traps set around the county. Would you have any idea just how wide or broad the area is where you have these traps? Is it from one end of the borderland to the other? Can you give me an idea?
Yes, so we set traps throughout El Paso County, all the way from Anthony, Texas, as far east as Tornillo.
So it's a really broad area, the entire county?
Right, the entire county, the city of El Paso, all the surrounding municipalities and townships.
Are there areas around the county where these traps are not set, like maybe Horizon, Tornillo, any areas that you don't have access to?
Yeah, so the city has interlocal agreements with the county and all the townships and municipalities. What these are is basically contracts with these townships. There are 2 that have opted out this year, and that was Horizon and Clint.
Okay. Is it possible then that those areas where you don't have traps to capture these mosquitoes, that some of the mosquitoes could be getting into neighboring counties, or do those counties have their own mosquito control?
It is possible. You know, mosquitoes have a traveling distance of up to about a mile, so there is a possibility of some of these mosquitoes entering into various counties and townships and whatnot.
And do those counties and townships have their own mosquito control?
I believe Horizon does. Clint, I'm not too sure of.
Ms. Castaneda, you all send samples of those mosquitoes trapped to the state capitol for testing. How often do you send those samples? And it is unusual that none of those samples sent out tested positive for West Nile, or given the fact that we have a woman with the virus.
So just for clarification, the area where the woman resides has not had a positive sample that we've sent to Austin. So we have had some positive samples throughout, like you said, the county, from Anthony to Tornillo. There have been some positive samples sent. But just like this occasion where unfortunately this woman has tested positive, we take care of them right away once we receive the results.
So again, going back to this whole thing about maybe where she lives, correct, it didn't test positive. It's possible that she may have gone to some of these other areas where you have seen some mosquitoes that tested positive for West Nile, that she could have been there and may have been bitten by mosquitoes?
Correct. So, mosquitoes, it's not like you asked Mr. Zarate, they may be having mosquitoes in their areas that we don't necessarily set traps in. Mosquitoes don't have a GPS to say, this is where I stay. They travel about 1 mile radius, and they can even travel further because you can wind up with a mosquito in your vehicle and you're transporting the vehicle, the mosquito from one end of the city to the other end and not even realizing it.
So it's possible that in areas where you did have mosquitoes that tested positive for the West Nile virus, that the woman may have either been bitten or have been traveling with that mosquito that tested positive, or that could have tested positive?
Correct.
Okay. And once you find out that that you have West Nile virus in a certain area, and I'm not going to ask you to identify because we're probably going to scare a lot of folks at home, but once you've identified an area where a mosquito tested positive for the West Nile virus, then what action do you take?
So the process is the same for both in the sense of a sample that we've submitted to Austin and a person that has tested positive. Our process is the same where we go and we fog the area, but we also monitor the area, survey the area for water sources. So we're looking for any breeding sites, any area that could be breeding, and try to treat that area so that we can reduce the population if it's that's where it was occurring.
Given my past experience, what I've been able to get is that there are certain mosquitoes that carry a certain type of virus, say Eastern equine encephalitis, and in this case, West Nile virus. What sort of mosquitoes that you have been able to identify carry the West Nile virus? Are you familiar with that?
Culex.
What do they look like? Do they have longer legs, longer tail? What?
So I guess the best way to identify what we have is we have Aedes and Culex, and then they all break down into even bigger subgroups and species, and I'd rather not, we can spend a whole week in that, and we'd rather not, but just to break it down into two, Aedes and Culex. What the difference is that some of them have striping on their legs, and what we call commas on their backs. That's a way of separating the two species.
Okay. Well, given we're going to take a really quick break, and given the fact that we now have West Nile virus in this year, this is the 4th case, could we have mosquitoes carrying the virus somewhere else in our community? As we go to break, a reminder to observe the 4 Ds. Try to avoid venturing outdoors during dusk and dawn hours. Dress appropriately, wearing long sleeves and long legs to avoid being bitten by mosquitoes, and drain stagnant water around the house. And also, use insect repellent with DEET. You're watching ABC 7 Extra Sunday Edition, where news comes first.
Carl's Jr.'s new Big Char Chili Burger is big on charbroiled flavor, big on smoky sweet heat with a whole charred Anaheim chili, and big on savings with the Big Char Chili Combo for just $7.99.
What an incredible gift we have in the Eucharist. This gift cannot be kept to ourselves. Today I am here to encourage you to commit faithfully to the Progress Catholic Ministry appeal. Your gift allows our ministries to offer services and resources to our parishes, schools, and families. Please join me by prayerfully discerning your gift today. Thank you, and may God continue to bless you and your families.
Wow, these X-ray glasses are amazing. What do you see? What? That's where my sandwich went. Get $6,777 off a new Sierra 1500 Denali, or get $4,000 off a new Acadia SLT.
Drive a new Buick or GMC today with $0 down, plus no payments for 90 days.
Take a look at your new ride at Casa Buick GMC.
Home of the nice guys.
Yeah!
Your smile says a lot about you. At the office of Dr. Daniel Castro, we pride ourselves with creating the perfect smile safely and comfortably. Whether you need dental implants, veneers, crowns, or other phases of dental care, Dr. Castro and his team can provide you with the best care. And with our new equipment and technology, there's no doubt you'll be happy with the results. And now that the masks are off, we intend on bringing back the best smiles to our community. Call now or visit us online to learn how we can give you the perfect smile.
Carl's Jr.'s new Big Char Chili Burger is big on charbroiled flavor, big on smoky sweet heat with a whole charred Anaheim chili, and big on savings with the Big Char Chili Combo for just $7.99.
Welcome back to ABC 7 Extra Sunday Edition. I also want to welcome back my guest, Jason E. Zarate, the Vector Control Operations Manager. And sitting right next to him is Jeannie Castaneda, Code Operations Supervisor for Vector Control. Thank you so much for both of you for sticking around. And Mr. Zarate, at the top of the program, I mentioned that we've had very little rain this season. In fact, an almost non-existent monsoon season. Given that, what does the mosquito population look like this year so far? Is it big?
So I mean, we've still had, quite a bit amount of mosquitoes, especially because of the drier season. What we're finding is a lot of people that have watering rights, or just even in their, the yards around the city are typically watering more because of the drier season. So, of course, the water is what, the mosquitoes need to breed. So, we're still finding that there is quite a bit amount of mosquito breeding occurring.
And do you take a proactive approach into trying to find areas that have high mosquito populations, or do you rely mostly on folks to call you up and say, look, we have a lot of mosquitoes in our area, can you come and spray?
No, so our officers are out there every day, they're setting traps and they're doing their surveillance to look for these higher sources of mosquito breeding. They're looking for standing water sources, and we're doing everything we can to try to mitigate the problem.
Okay, so you have both. You also have people calling you up.
Right.
Okay, Ms. Castaneda, given the extremely hot temperatures, a record for September alone, do mosquitoes have breeding grounds, or is standing water just evaporating right away? In other words, do they have fewer breeding grounds?
So within the city, there are some breeding grounds that evaporate or absorb right away. But many of our challenges has been, for example, as Mr. Zarate stated, watering. Watering, because it's been dry and everything, people are taking advantage of watering their lawns or their water rights in the county areas. And the water needs to absorb or evaporate quicker to keep that from happening. What many people don't understand is that there's also what's considered an artificial container, and that could be something from a bottle cap or children's toys, because we just finished the summer season. Anything in the outside that can hold water, any type of vessel that can hold water. So if you are watering your grass or watering your lawn and you're not removing those, then you can have a breeding site on your own property.
All right, let's get to the process of trapping those mosquitoes. You were kind enough to bring some live mosquitoes as well as a trap of sorts. Let's show our viewers exactly what it is that we're talking about. They're sitting side by side. Can you describe what we're looking at, Ms. Castaneda?
Yes, so the bigger container with the netting in the back, that comes from one of our gravid traps. And the way it works is that it is battery operated, and there's a fan at the bottom along with the water bin. So the mosquito goes in there and the fan will suck it up and place it, and it goes into the trap.
If I can interrupt you, how's it attracted there in the first place?
Through the water. Usually it's a female mosquito, and it will try to lay its eggs in the water so that the breeding process can start.
Okay, and then the one that's directly next to that we're about to show you, this item right here, those are samples. What do you do with those?
So what happens is that the first one that we saw, those are the live mosquitoes. There's many times where that is full. It's completely full. And what we're interested in is mosquitoes only. So we also get some other pests in there. The officers will remove the mosquitoes only, and they will place it in those sample cups that we just saw. So the sample cup will be noted, and then it'll be sent to Austin for testing.
So in that sample cup that you have right there, is that where you separate the two or the different species or varieties of mosquitoes and determine which ones are most likely to carry either the two diseases or several diseases of viruses, Eastern Equine and West Nile?
Thankfully, we don't have to do that. The City of Austin does that for us, sir.
Okay, and I noticed that both the sample as well as the one where you have the live mosquitoes, you don't have very many. Is that because you didn't capture very many that day, or is it because of the dry conditions that we've been going through?
It can be a combination. It can be somewhere where there's not a breeding site in the area. So since there's not a lot of breeding, they're not in the trap that day. And that doesn't mean that we stop there. As you can see, I explained the process to you where just because we had a low capture on a trap, we don't necessarily stop there, because we still send those samples for testing.
And this question is for both of you. Can we identify which part of the borderland or which part of the county is seeing the highest mosquito population?
Ooh.
Can that be identified? I mean, and the lower valley doesn't have a whole lot, but it's got the river. And then up in the northeast, where you really don't have a whole lot of water up there, or canals or something like that. So is there an area where you can say, there are a lot of mosquitoes right here? I do know that one of my coworkers was telling me that up here in the west side, they were seeing a lot of mosquitoes. So is there an area that you're familiar with that has a high mosquito population?
So it does vary from year to year, just so you know. But I think this year, particularly because of the drier conditions and the ability since the water rights, I believe, have been extended out in the county areas, we're probably seeing, a little more out there than normal, or in other areas as well.
Okay, we're going to take another really quick break, but when we come back, I'll ask my guests from Vector Control what home remedies you can use to keep mosquitoes away, as well as getting rid of standing water. We'll be right back.
After I decided my pain was too much, and my doctor actually suggested that I do visit the Good Feet store. Pretty amazing when they put the arch supports in your shoe and you walk around and you realize there's not pain, and you think, how can this arch support in my shoe make my back pain go away? But it works. And how can it make my knee pain go away? It was incredible.
Hip, knee, or back pain? See if arch supports can help you at the Good Feet store.
The next generation of streaming is here. Introducing Spectrum One Stream with Spectrum Internet, delivering fast and reliable speeds, advanced Wi-Fi for enhanced security on your devices, Spectrum Mobile with unlimited talk, text, and data, and now TV with the all-new Zumo Stream Box. Get Spectrum One Stream with Internet for $49.99 a month, plus free advanced Wi-Fi, a free unlimited Spectrum mobile line, and the Zumo Stream Box, free when you add Spectrum TV. Call 833-976-4999. With Spectrum and Zumo, all your favorites are brought together in one place. Use the voice remote to search across live TV, on-demand movies and shows, and the most popular streaming apps to watch what you want faster and easier than ever. It's streaming simplified. Get Spectrum One Stream with Internet, advanced Wi-Fi, mobile, and now TV. Go to spectrum.com/stream, a Spectrum store, or call 833-976-4999.
Our mission and our promise to our clients is that we're here for you. We do personal injury, and we do personal injury right. We care about you, we care about your case, no matter how large or small. Come to the law office of Michael Gopin, and you will be taken care of. And we will strive to do the best we possibly can for your case and for your family. Trust in us, and we will trust in you.
Welcome back to our third and final segment of ABC 7 Extra Sunday Edition. I also want to welcome back our guests, Jason Zarate, the Vector Control Operations Manager, and Jenny Castaneda, Code Operations Supervisor for Vector Control. Let's talk about some of those home remedies, if you all have some, that some folks can use at home. Say, for instance, maybe somebody says, you know what, I'm allergic to DEET. Is there anything else that I can use either to apply myself or to try to get rid of the mosquitoes around my house?
So, there are some home remedies, and the best thing to do is view it online.
Sure.
Citronella or lavender or many of the herbs or scents like that have been claimed. They state that they do help with mosquito control. Something else that could be of assistance is plants. There are some plants you can check with your greenhouses or nurseries and see if maybe some of those type of plants like citronella, as I stated, or lemongrass can be planted or potted near the doors to help reduce mosquitoes from entering your house or being on your property.
Okay. And what about some sort of applications on yourself to keep mosquitoes away from you? Is there some specific oil or anything, some sort of home remedy that they can apply on their own?
So there are some of those, those like lemon type of scents, the citronella oils. I know that
they're available to apply on yourself.
Right, well, Possibly, and then they also, I believe so, and then they also have those. I've seen those wristbands where they have the kind of the scents, the citronella scent that come out of that kids can wear. You know, I've used those on my children, and they seem to be pretty effective.
Okay, let's talk about what you don't recommend, because obviously we're giving them good tips on what it is that you can use around your home and on yourself, home remedies. What is it that people should stay away from that maybe you've been seeing and say, this really doesn't work? Say, for instance, one of the things that I had heard about was maybe burning peanut shells. Does that even work?
Oh my goodness, that's the first time I'm hearing about that.
Is there something that you want people to stay away from so that, you know, that doesn't work, don't try it? It's best to use either DEET or another home remedy.
Well, yeah, and so rather than like just randomly trying things that they may find on the internet that they say may work, right? Some like pseudo stuff. I think it's better just to practice 4Ds. Yeah. I think that's probably the most important, most effective way to eliminate the, you know, being bitten by mosquitoes.
And Ms. Castaneda, one of the things that we were talking about, some of the traps that you all use, or at least that are used elsewhere, is dry ice. Not a good idea to have dry ice around the house, right?
No, it isn't.
You want to explain that?
Okay, so the reason we have two traps that we use, one is a gravid, which that netting that we previously showed goes to our gravid trap. And the other one that we use is a light trap. And the light trap has a little bulb and it has some tubing, and we use dry ice. And the dry ice and goes through the tubing, the foam or the gas, I'm sorry, of the dry ice goes through the tubing, and it simulates breath. It simulates our breathing. So this is what attracts the mosquitoes to go into the netting and get trapped in there. So dry ice is dangerous if not handled properly because of the burning. You can get burned, suffer burns from it.
So, Mr. Zarate, we did touch upon this earlier in the program about the fact that we haven't had a whole lot of water, standing water in the area. Is Vector Control right now doing any spraying anywhere across the borderland, anywhere across the county?
Yeah, I mean, we still continue to monitor, you know, surveillance the area, and when we find areas of high captures, or if we have, you know, any positive samples that come back with West Nile or any positive human cases, we still go out and we fog those areas.
Okay, and another follow-up question that I have for you is it urban myth or is it a fact that where there are large numbers of dead birds, you may very well see some sort of virus in the area among mosquitoes?
Unfortunately, that's probably not something that I can answer. I don't believe I'm the expert on that, and maybe I'd probably defer that to the health department in that case.
Okay, so can homeowners request spraying or check standing waters in the area if they see maybe dead birds in the area? I
mean, we encourage people to go ahead and call. I mean, they can call our phone number. It's 915-212-6000. And they can go ahead and put in a concern or register an issue, and we'll send somebody out to check the area.
Okay, and the trucks, the ones that we've seen in the past that spray an entire area, are those still going out, or is it just upon request?
No, so I mean, they can request it, but we will still go out first and do surveillance. We will check for any standing water sources to see if we can find it. We'll try to treat the water sources
There's
first.
the truck we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to treat them first, or treat the water sources. You know, I think the misconception is that like fogging is a cure-all, and it really isn't. Fogging is just a remedy to the symptom, but not really the cause.
What do you mean by that?
And so, you know, fogging will only kill the adult mosquitoes, but there's still a whole other population of mosquitoes that's coming up right behind that with the larvae and the pupa that are developing. So really the best bet is to try to treat those standing water sources or eliminate those water sources altogether.
Okay. And there's also been in the past the use of I guess, fish that prey on larvae. Do you all have that in some areas that have large amounts of water, say maybe the rivers, the canals, or anything like that?
So we do have some minnows. Minnows, they eat larvae. There's other fish. There's other type of, I guess, amphibian, like frogs and things like that will eat the larvae. To say that we have it, we don't have an abundance of it. What we try to do is if we find any, we'll take advantage and move them from one reservoir to another to help biologically control the mosquito population. As Mr. Zarate stated, we try to treat the water source first.
All right. Ms. Jeannie Castaneda, Mr. Zarate, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
Thank you for having us.
And before I sign off this Sunday evening, I want to leave you with this interesting fact. According to BBC Science Focus, mosquitoes are the world's most deadly animal in the world, killing 725,000 humans per year through spreading diseases such as malaria. But only female mosquitoes bite, making them the most dangerous. I'm Saul Saenz, and this has been ABC 7 Extra Sunday Edition. Good night y buenas noches.
Thank you for watching. ABC 7 News is now available on any of these streaming services, as well as the KVIA News and KVIA Weather and Traffic apps.